like to visit with you today for a little bit about the decision that needs to be made. Do I buy workers' comp or do I buy a work comp alternative? Do I want to be a subscriber or a non-subscriber? So let me explain some statistics and then some thoughts of my own. Statistically, about 36% of employers in the state of Texas are non-subscribers. Now, we don't know how accurate that is, but the estimates have remained pretty stable for the last 12 to 15 years, so there's no big growth one way or the other. Keeping in mind that as one of the largest general agencies in the state for non-subscription, we make probably 90–95% of our income off of non-subscription. Yet I will be the first one to tell agents and to tell employers alike that there are only two reasons to ever leave workers' comp. One, to save a substantial amount of money, not just a little bit. And I ask employers all the time, can you explain to me how this savings that you're getting for exiting the comp system and purchasing a non-subscriber product, how that amount of money is going to make a difference in your business or your life? If you can say yes to that, then fine. We should consider a non-subscriber policy. The other reason is to get control of claims. As we stated in one of the first discussions, under workers' comp, the claim is between the injured employee and the insurance company. And you don't see the employer's name in there anywhere. As a non-subscriber, the employer or his designee is the plan administrator, and they literally control the claim. So you have that kind of control. Now, what does that incorporate? Probably the most important part is in workers' comp, you cannot direct medical care. The employee has a right to go to any licensed physician that has not been banned by the state. And I think of 57 trillion physicians in the state of Texas, one of them has been banned. So they can just basically go anywhere. As a non-subscriber, you can, and in my opinion should, designate the company-approved medical provider and inform your employees who that is, and you tell them in writing, in no uncertain terms, that except in the event of a life-threatening situation, if you're injured on the job, you go here. And if you go anywhere else, we're not going to pay for it. Now, how powerful is that? Give you a real example. It happened right here in Dallas several years ago. Gentleman had a sit-down job in a warehouse sorting parts. Claimed he hurt his knee. So he went to the company-approved medical provider. Guy couldn't find anything wrong with him, so he gave him some anti-inflammatories and told him to go back to work. Well, he didn't go back to work. About 3 days later, he calls in and talks to the employer, the owner, and he says, I was still hurting when I left your doctor, so I went out to my chiropractor out here by my house. And he says, I really need to be off for 6 weeks, and I need to have therapy 3 times a week while I'm off. And the employer, because he listened when we were talking to him, said to the young man, well, if you want to be off for 6 weeks, that's fine. But since you weren't placed on disability by my company-approved medical provider, we're not going to pay you. And if you want to have therapy 3 times a week, that's fine too. But since you weren't referred to your chiropractor by our company-approved medical provider, we're not going to pay for that either. Oh, and one last thing. You didn't call in for 3 days. You're fired. You see, you're not required to retain a position for an employee as a non-subscriber. Now, you don't want to cut his benefits off or anything else, but if you don't want him back, when he's released, maximum medical improvement to come back to work, you just tell him you filled the position. There's nothing he can do about it. So I'm going to suggest to agents and to employers alike, if you're considering non-subscription, make very sure that you get a workers' comp quote and a non-subscriber quote at the same time and compare them side by side. Now, I can sit here and tell you all day long that statistically non-subscription overall is about 40% less expensive than workers' comp. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but that's a good average. You, as an employer, have to determine whether or not that amount of savings is going to make that difference in your life or justifies the additional risk that you are taking by exiting the comp system. Now, let me explain that one just a little bit. I went with an agent years ago. It was an air conditioning employer, and he had comp for $18,000 a year. The agent that took me in had another comp quote for $15,000 a year, so there's a $3,000 a year savings right there. And he brought me in to propose non-subscription, and yes, we had a very quality company that had quoted for $12,000 a year. And I literally had to ask the employer, Why would you take on all this additional risk for $3,000 a year? You've got a $1,000 deductible in my policy. You have 3 claims that go through the deductible. You have lost all of the benefit of exiting the comp system from a monetary standpoint, and you still have that risk of getting sued. So it just doesn't make sense. So think about that when you're proposing non-subscription versus workers' comp. Let me put this in layman's terms. I define insurance as the transfer of risk. As an employer, I have a risk. The employee could get hurt, it's going to cost a lot of money. I don't want that risk, so I buy a workers' comp policy. I pay the premium, you take the risk. I don't want to have anything to do with it. Everybody's happy. Until I finally decide that I'm paying you a lot of money to take that risk, and I would really like to have some of my money back. Now in Texas, at least you have that option. But what you've got to understand is when you take some of that money back, you've got to take some of the risk along with it. And the risk is that $1,000 deductible and the threat of a lawsuit. So keep that in mind when you're trying to make that decision. Do I stay in comp or do I get out? God bless Texas that we have that opportunity, that we can do this in this great state of Texas. A lot of employers take advantage of it. Some of them like it so much they say they wouldn't go back to comp if the price was lower, and some of them have proven to me that they are exactly that way. But that's a decision for the employer to make. And he's got to know both sides of the story so he can make a qualified decision. Thanks for stopping by to visit. I hope these discussions have been enlightening. If you have any more questions or need any more of an in-depth explanation of anything that we've covered today, don't hesitate to call. Again, my name is Ed Dietrich. It's Texas Non-Subscriber. Don't forget our website, www.texnonsub.com, and that is TEXNONSUB.com. And the phone number, 972-675-6596. And for those of you that are out of town, it's 1-800-820-7104. Look forward to hearing from you. Don't forget that I also teach workers' comp and non-subscription for CE credit. If you have any need for CE credit training, I'll be happy to come by your office and do my PowerPoint presentation. It's 1 hour for work comp and 1 hour for non-subscription, and I don't charge you anything for it. So just contact my office and we'll be happy to get you on the schedule. Thank you very much.